before you joined the program, like what was going wrong in the marriage that things were falling apart that called you to like want to seek help?
So, I mean, basically the typical story of like, that's what hit home when I found your program is like, was just blindsided by everything, thought everything was going along fine, disagreed some and this and that, but just pretty much come home one day and she said, I'm not happy anymore and I want to leave.
Hmm.
Still love you, but I'm not in love with you. Like pretty much everything, and blindsided by that. And I, went down all the roads that thought I was doing the right thing to fix things, but handling it all the wrong way. So,
Yeah.
and then you topple that all with not sleeping and everything, like just a bad, bad rabbit hole to go down with all that. And then that's where like one day I decided, sitting around here and crying and moping around ain't going to fix any of that. So I'm going to find a way to fix this. And I started Googling things. And that's when I come across this program and was like, watched a few of the videos on YouTube and stuff and was like, dang, this hits home. Like this is exactly my situation. So I'm going to see where I can go with this, and dove right in and started making like, just went from there.
So we'll get into all the went from there stuff. I want to dive a little bit deeper. So what did you when she first gave you that, it's crazy how pretty much every wife says the same thing almost to a T, with an amount, right? It's almost like they're all talking to each other in some group chatters.
Oh, without a doubt. And that's what that I was like, God, it's like he's reading my story right now of
Yeah,
everything that's happened. And it's just
yeah.
wild how close this hits to everything that's happened here.
Right, right. Well, what did you try stuff? Did you come, was the first thing you tried us, or was there some other things you tried to save it on your own?
No, I mean, I just did this, like went to washing dishes. Like, so with us, I stayed gone a lot. I was home a lot too, but I traveled. So I work in the gas field, the oil field. So I worked quite a few hours, but then I also competition coon hunted. So
Oh,
I was
wow.
gone at night a lot, traveling around to competition hunts and stuff like that. And so, she went to bed on her own a lot of nights and stuff like that. And she had told me that had bothered her, but I never took it serious, to the point that I thought our relationship was at risk. And she had been trying to
Mhm.
tell me all along, and I just didn't want to hear it, So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Huh.
immediately I quit coon hunting. Like I said, I'm not going to let something like that come in between me and my family. So I dropped that like a rock and said, done with that. And then of course, what the other thing, you hadn't been doing enough around the house and stuff. So then I went to washing dishes, and there wasn't a dirty dish or piece of clothes in the laundry hamper anywhere around for a month or two there, but of course
Mhm.
that wasn't helping anything. That like
Mhm.
it almost created resentment. Like, why was you not doing this before?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's because as you probably know, when you're in that negative sentiment, she sees you just through the negative lens. No matter what you do positively, it's always going to go through that filter, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. And so, how long ago did you join the program? Let's start there.
So she told me all of this started the day after Mother's Day.
Okay.
So I can't remember exactly when I joined the program. It was probably a month and a half, 2 months, somewhere around that after that. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so before we dive into now, just Matt, like all the different things that you did along the program, all the stuff that you've learned to get to where you are now. Let's talk about where you are now. Like, why are we setting up this call? Like, what's been going on positively in the relationship?
so pretty much like, and that's what I talked to Nate a little bit about this, but like a little bit gun shy to say we're back in as good a place as we've ever been, and we are. Like, and she's told me that, but I'm a little bit concerned. Like, don't want to jinx things because I was blindsided by it from the get go. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
kind of hard to let your guard down on that again. But
I totally feel like it's almost too good to be true feeling, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But as you know, it's like, yeah, have that understanding of like being vigilant and not sliding back to old habits for sure.
exactly,
But a big part of that is to also be like, yeah, of course she wants to work it out with me. I have been making these changes and like feel some pride in that, right? And what
100%. And
would
I feel that way. Like like that's what I've told Nate. Like I am, no matter what, still just treating it like I'm going to work to be the best version of myself, regardless if it works out. So therefore, like if for some reason it didn't work out, I can still hold my head high and say I've done everything I can to everything for myself and everything. If it doesn't work out now, it's not because of neglect of me.
right, right. And so what is like the biggest win that has so she like did she say that she loves you again? Like you guys in the same bed? Like
Uh, we're back in the same bed. Tells me she loves me every day. I mean, she's apologized for everything. Went and canceled the divorce. I mean, making plans for the future, pretty much.
wow. Okay. So like basically have like full complete turnaround.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's dive into what happened along the journey, the things that you did. And so not only can anyone, that would hear your story can understand for themselves, but just like you can almost like reinforce for yourself what you did successfully. So what was like the first big shift internal shift in you that allowed you to start to make these changes?
So basically, just like what we was talking about a while ago, like the dishes and stuff like that. After you start doing some of that, you're like, well, and I mean, things were real. She was looking for a place to move out and had found a place and everything. And comes down to, I'm going to be doing this stuff regardless whether she's here or not. So it's not to make
Mhm.
her happy anymore. It's I just got to get in the routine of doing this stuff. And that's the thing. Like that's how I am at work and everything. And I think I'd just gotten in a complacent spot at the house to where wasn't that I was intentionally neglecting anything, but just didn't I was just letting myself get by with, not doing stuff around the house and thinking, no matter what I do, she's not going to leave. So
Right. That taking it for granted.
yes,
And so the best way to overcome that is these things that she first said, oh, you're only doing this for this reason. And so her pulling away and she's still seeing you do these things, that's proof to her. It's almost so that goes into the idea of the test, right? That we
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
that, right? Her saying like, oh, why, you don't care, don't do these things, doesn't matter, doesn't make a difference. That was
yeah,
a test, right? To see if you would stop. Because if you stop, yeah, you aren't doing it for real, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that type of stuff was probably the first little bit of turning point, and uh, I don't know. I'm not good at recollecting exactly like what I did step for step, but that that was the first positive step, and by no means like you're saying, like there was definitely still tests there. That was by no means a turning point for her. If anything, it made it worse when she went to the point where she was pushing and wanted papers signed next week, and
Hmm.
when all this began, I'd looked her in the eye then and told her, I don't care what you do with any of this. Like, I was born hard headed for a reason. I'm going to use it to work on this marriage and make this work. So, of course, she didn't want to hear that then. She's thanked me now for hanging in there and doing, working for the right thing. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like there was some hard stuff. Like she found another house that she rented another house and went and stayed there a couple of nights. And
Yeah.
I talked to Nate back and forth some a little bit on that because she didn't have anybody to help her do some of that stuff. So I helped her move some furniture into that house and everything. And I think that really played with her a little bit, her emotions some on that because, that I was willing to help even in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And what would you say is another lesson from the program that was like, oh, okay, this is what's been going on, right? And something that you shifted.
So one that really hit home for me, like, I mean, a lot of the stuff programming, then I kept seeing guys referencing the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I read that book or listened to that audio book. And I was like, dang, like that's a big part of me. I'm the does no wrong people pleaser. I've never been drunk in my life or anything else. And just
Yeah.
a lot of that played in the covert contracts and stuff like that stuff I done nonstop, that never even like, it was just an eye opener of how much of that you done. And just, that's all I needed to stop it, is just the realization that's what I was doing, So, and the neediness and stuff like that, like those parts that y'all talk about through that, and then hearing it another way with the No More Mr. Nice Guy and stuff like that, that all really hit home for me to
Mhm.
stop some of that type of stuff.
Yeah, even just having the awareness alone of these nice guy habits, right? And how they really play a role in the relationship. You look back at these times where maybe you're like, you're more defensive, like I wasn't doing anything wrong. And then you can see, oh, I was doing it for this reason. Like I was trying to change her emotions, or I see why she was calling me controlling, because I was trying to control her emotions in a way, or the
Yeah,
covert contracts, right? Of like doing something, but under the surface, you're expecting something in return. And when you can release that, it makes her feel like, oh yeah, he's safe, right? Like
yeah,
that whole emotional safety is such a cornerstone of all that.
yeah, for 100%. And that's like, that was something, we've talked about along the way, that I've told her I've understood, because she's like, yeah, like she couldn't explain it until I explained it. And she's like, oh, that's it, 100%. Like, I felt that way. I couldn't put that into words of what was going on there. And like,
Mhm.
I see it now. Like, no doubt that's what I've been doing.
What about the way you guys communicate? Has that shifted since joining? Like talking.
Oh, 100%. She just made the comment. We stayed up till 1 o'clock the other night just talking about life and stuff. And we hadn't done that in a long time. I was bad about coming home the time I was. I'm like, I always have made time to spend time with the kids, but when the kids went to bed and stuff, I didn't make time to go sit and listen to her and stuff. And, I'd sit down and put on a basketball game or something, and just, I would
Right, right, right.
sit there and unwind, but be in a different world. And she would be on her phone. She, she comes from a family where pretty much you don't act like it's there and it's not there. Like, and I mean, she's told me that straight up. And we've talked a lot about that. Like, I've got to do a better job that reading something's there, but she also has to express her feelings a little bit better. Like, don't don't just play the card of like, that's the deal. Like, I probably deep down knew something was going on, that she wasn't completely happy, but she had the attitude of just don't act like it's not there, and just had, built a wall there. So I just overlooked it and thought, it's easier just to go on than dig into it and press with it. And I wouldn't have pressed in the right way anyway, like I wouldn't, when I've never not communicated with her, but I've probably couldn't, like when something would come up, I would probably come at it too hard and say, okay, what's the problem? Like, I see there's a problem, let's deal with it, instead of saying, okay, like, let's talk it out, or, like, what's on your mind, and just easing into it instead of coming in like a bull saying, let's get it by the horns and deal with this.
Yeah, I just talked about that recently where it's like, when she does express her emotions, right? Like us, one of the biggest differences between men and women, right, is us men, we like when we hear a problem, like where's like, no, when we hear people talking, where's the problem, right? Where's
Yeah.
the problem? What can I solve? And um, when with women, it's I'm talking to you because I want to connect with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up all these issues and these emotions because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Then I feel more connected. So, having that difference between the masculine and the feminine and the way of communication, it allows you to kind of connect with her more and make her feel more understood and validated.
Yeah, 100%. And the masculine and feminine, like that was all a big thing that clicked in my head too. Like, that helped me see what was going on. Like, I was pushing her into masculine roles a lot with the type of stuff I did. Like, stuff as simple as like what you said something about it in a video about deciding where to eat, and it's something we argue over all the time. And it's like, that was something that was started making little positive things, that when something like that would come up, I'd just make the decision. And she, since I've told her some of this stuff I've learned, like, she loves it so much that if the discussion comes up where to eat and she says, I don't know, like, if I say, let's pick, these two or three places, she'll say, you pick. And I just pick. Like, she, she loves that. It's because she's like, I absolutely hate making choices. And she's not a decision maker. And I've pushed her into those roles in the past to where like she's got she is a strong, independent minded woman anyway. So when I push her that direction, she takes on that role too much. Like she doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily want to be there, but goes that direction.
exactly. I was going to say that, Matt, like just because she can doesn't mean she wants to. That's the biggest mistake a lot of men make with their wives is like, well, she naturally does this, so she must want to. Like, no, she had to learn how to do that because a lot of men like, all right, well, she's doing it. I'm just going to sit back and relax. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
it's stressful to her. And so, yeah, not just leading with the food's the big one, of course, like deciding where to eat, but just in the relationship, like making decisions like where are we going with the family? Like, what are we doing? Like, are we taking a vacation? Where are we going for summer? Like, what are we doing with the kids? Where are we putting the school? Like, all these decisions. It doesn't mean she has no say in it, but you, all, as the man, you're always putting your opinion in, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't have one, like I really don't care. It's like, well, still make a decision, right?
Yeah. And that's where I struggle a little bit because like most things I'm easygoing and I'm not opinionated and not like I've got to just make myself be like, okay, like just got to make a decision here because if I hem haw around, it's there there's nothing going to come and that's where it come down to like in August we had our 10-year anniversary and we were still, you know, she was back in the mindset that she was wanting to work on it, but still wasn't there yet. Like it still felt like she was doing it for the kids and everything. And we had talked about booking a cruise and she had been back and forth on like she wanted to do it. And then the next day, you know, she was on that emotional roller coaster back and forth there. And one day that's what I said, you know what, I'm going on the cruise either way. Like you either come get on the boat or you don't. I'm going to
Mm.
Mexico. And from that day on, she was like, okay, like then she went to planning the cruise and didn't even think about not doing it or anything. And you know, I was like, if we go on the cruise, regardless, we'll go get away from everything going on here and go spend some time alone. Or if you want to just whatever you want to do, if you want to spend the time alone on the cruise, like I'm telling you, I'm going on the cruise. So you're more than welcome to come with me. And
That example speaks to exactly like the attraction paradox that we talked about in the program, right? Where it's like the wanting but not needing her. It's like, hey, I'm living my life this way. I would like you to come, but I'm not going to force you. Like the
yeah,
invitation there is almost as like an analogy, Matt, where it's like you have this house, right? And it's like you're not going to try to bring her in, pull her in and get into the home, but you're not going to lock her out either. You're like, hey, the door's unlocked. You know how to get in, or you have a key. Like I'm going to be in here, taking care of myself, or having a good old time. Maybe having a party in the house. You're welcome. And so, what that does is like it gives her like you show her you want her there, but you
yeah,
don't need to like pull her in and like be needy
right.
about it.
Yep, for sure. That's a good way to sum that up, I feel like, of what went on there. And then like she's talked a lot about that since then. Like on the drive back, we didn't talk about any of the problems or anything whatsoever the whole time we were on the cruise. And then, you know, had a 8-hour drive back to the house and along the way with probably 3 to 4 hours left, you know, then just been sitting there quiet for a few minutes and something come up and she brought something up about it, you know, like I can't even remember what it is, but what it was, but you know, just something along the lines. So how are things? How are we right now? Or and that got a talk started, and we talked for the next 2 to 3 hours about stuff, and that's where. So I'll be honest, I never wrote out a CLC report, but there were some places like that I pretty much just had a conversation with a CLC, like told her some of the stuff I'd learned, what I'd been doing, like how I saw that I was doing all this, and that's what she's told me. Like I feel like a big turning point in her head that she said, you know, the conversation on the way home from the cruise was a big turning point of how I felt about things.
Yeah, that's what I say in the CLC report video, right? Which is like the best way to actually do this isn't a conversation. But the reason why I have guys put it in a letter for some of the men is because when they're with their wives and they're feeling needy and anxious, like sometimes they can't verbalize things
Yeah,
correctly. Putting it in a letter is better. But for some men like yourself, it's like, no, I can say this to my wife. I understand it. Like I can speak it out. And so it depends on the context too, right? Like a lot of times too, some of the wives, they're, in a different home. And so it's like, and they're not seeing each other. So they have to send like a
Yeah.
letter. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So you gave a verbal CLC in a way, and having that heart to heart conversation. It's like, and she sensed that you were doing these things for yourself. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and that was I told her that like I'm by no means. I mean, it come down to the point like what we had went to the lawyer together because she wanted, she was ready to sign papers and she had filed papers and I had to go sign, basically been served. And then it come down and we live on a farm that's been in my son's the fifth generation on this farm and everything. And to keep everything without having to sell, like if I was going to have to pay her for half of it or whatever, I was going to have to sell all this. And she had said she didn't want half of anything, but it come down to where I was having to make a decision. Do I go sign papers to protect the farm or drag this out and fight for it and take a chance of losing everything? And
Mm.
so we had went and talked to lawyers over that and everything. And I told her, even if I do sign papers on this, doesn't mean I'm walking away from you, like giving up on there being a chance of this in the future. But I'd went to the lawyer with her and everything, and then went by a couple of days there, and I'd kind of talked to Nate a little bit, and I come back a couple of days later, and I said, you know what, I don't, I hope to be able to pass this all on to my kids one day, but I don't really care about any of this. Like, I'm not going to sign papers right now, is what I'm telling you, because to her the papers didn't mean that much. Like, but to me it did. When I went and signed those marriage papers, I didn't ever plan on walking away from this. And so signing the papers was just against everything I had in me,
That's the advice we give, right? Is like, you don't have to comply, but you do it not to fight against her, but to fight for the marriage.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did, right? I hear it in your language you're choosing to speak about it. You're like, that vow meant something to you, right? And so you were going to hold off as long as possible, not to keep her from needing this, but to like fight for the marriage, right? What was
Yeah.
your word? Your
Exactly.
vow. Yeah, man, such an it's inspiration to hear this, Matt. And let me ask you. So one of the last questions I ask the guys is just if you could go back, let's say a year, and give yourself a piece of advice that he needed to hear, what would you tell yourself?
Mm. To watch all the things in this course before all this happened. Like,
Yeah, I get
not
that.
like
Yeah.
so since all it like I've tried to read like a lot of just men's books like just personal growth type books and a lot of it's all about the same thing and a lot of them are books you suggest in the course and everything, but I think some of that, if I wouldn't have been complacent in the spot I was a year ago and would have been trying to do some of that, like my eyes might have opened a little bit. I feel like if I would have been already doing some of that, but you're not in that mindset at that point either. So
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, right? Is like you got to be broken down in order to receive,
yeah,
and it's unfortunate because at that time, like the quote I always say all the time is that we only change from inspiration or desperation. That's not my quote, but it's true. And but in a way, God did break you down to become a better man, right? And so you had the I don't know what the right word is, but I guess the humility to be like, yeah, I do need to change these things. And you uh yeah, I was humbled. And then look where you're at now. So I'm just thank you for sharing this, man.
100%. I mean, she's come, apologizing about stuff, and I've told her that like we're going to be in a better spot in years to come. Probably like I by no means wanted any of this to happen, but now that my eyes are open to all of this, I can be a better version of myself to where you can be a happier person too. So we will be stronger out of this because of this.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, going through the conflict does make you stronger if you go through it together and you fight. It's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think it goes true with relationships as well. 100%.
Yeah.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much, man. Is there any, before we wrap up, is there any questions you have for me before I let you go?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah. I'm happy with everything. That's what I don't know what else to, like I say, I just kind of, it's almost too good to be true sometimes. It's
Well, go back to what I said, right? Like, yeah, definitely stay vigilant and don't go back to the old habits, but at the same time, commend, pat yourself on the back. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for getting on the call with me, man. Have a great night.
yes, sir. You too. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you too. See ya.
Let's see.